Welcome to Sales Secrets from the Top 1%, where the world's best sales experts share their secrets to sales success. My name is Brandon Bornancin, a serial salesperson and entrepreneur, and I'm sitting down with the world's best sales experts to share their top secrets to sales success. Hello and welcome to this episode of Sales Secrets from the Top 1%, where the world's best sales experts share their secrets to sales success. And I'm thrilled, honored, humbled, and grateful to have with me today Matt Wheeler. Matt is the CEO and co-founder of qualifiedMEETINGS, a proven sales process and full-service sales development program that will predictably grow your pipeline while providing data intelligence for strategies based on real data and sales conversions. Matt has contributed to over $250 million in new customer sales as an SDR and his inside sales programs over the last 10 years. Matt has 2 decades of sales experience, personally making over 250,000 outbound calls, managing over 3 million outbound dials and over 10 million sales activities with his SDR teams, which is all possible through the proven methodology known as qualifiedMEETINGS 2352 touch process. Matt, we're thrilled to have you join us today. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me. You describe myself better than I do, so that was a very good introduction. Thank you for that.
Awesome, man. Well, the audience is dying to know 2 things. Sales Secrets from the Top 1%, where the world's best sales experts share their secrets to sales success. Matt, what is your number 1 top sales secret? If you had to go back in time to when you first started in sales, if you had to hire a brand new sales team, what is that one secret that you would give to them written out on the what, the why, the how to execute? But before we get there, the audience is dying to know another thing. Who is Matt Wheeler? What is your background? How'd you get started in sales? And then where have you worked throughout your sales career and everything that you learned at every place that you worked, which we call micro secrets. And we're going to try to pull out all of those micro secrets that you've learned throughout your career so that the audience can skill up, maximize their sales, and then dive into your top sales secret. So without further ado, Matt, we'd love to hear from you on, who you are, where you came from. I know you're coming to us from sunny Florida. Would love to just get a quick background.
Brandon, thank you very much. My background is it's fairly interesting. Not the typical, probably IT sales background that you would expect to hear. My background actually started in the seafood space. I was in seafood for about 8 years. Selling crabs, selling seafood to some of the top restaurants and businesses in Maryland. And back in 2007, I realized I needed to have a life change and not be working 100 hours a day in restaurants. So I actually was able to make a transition out of the seafood sales into technology, which, today I'm the first person that I've met that's actually gone through a transition like that. So it's not very typical.
So would you work for a company that would literally catch the food in the ocean in Baltimore and then you'd take it and sell it, or how does that work?
Yeah, I grew up with the Phillips family back in Maryland, down Ocean City, Maryland, and they own 20, 30 restaurants across the U.S. and literally was at a 4th of July party and got talked into starting a seafood company to be able to help them bring fresh seafood into the restaurants. Where I grew up on the Eastern Shore of Maryland, it's a big agriculture, farming, fishing community. So I grew up with a lot of folks that are still watermen today that fish for crabs, fish, oysters, whatever it may be. So I literally at the time, I had a BMW and I started putting seafood in the trunk of the BMW, hauling back and forth to Baltimore. Within about 30 days, I got enough revenue going to go out and invest in the seafood trucks and things like that. And flash forward 8 years later, we had a restaurant, a wholesale division, catering company. We had a full blown seafood organization. But I also started having children and got married in that time period. So I went from being a single guy who didn't respect his time, to a guy who was devoted to his family and his wife, and working 12 to 14-hour days. And when cooks wouldn't show up to the kitchen, I was a cook. And when a server wouldn't show up, I was a server. And when somebody didn't show up to drive the truck, I was a driver. So that's just not a scalable business in a family sense. So I, at that point, I really took a hard look at my life and looked at my wife's life along with that and said, this is just not going to be a future that I want for my family. although it's a good income, all those other things, you give up a lot of the other things in life. And with technology, I had, friends that were doing tech sales, but they had gone to school and been more focused on doing that coming out of college. So for them, that was a, walk out of school, kind of get a job in the early stages of being a sales development and inside sales rep. For me, that wasn't an easy option, right? So I was beating on doors after we shut down the business for about 3 months. I mean, I took some just odd jobs doing sales to keep my family supported. And then finally, a good friend of mine was working for a company called Netcord, and he was an inside sales guy there. And they had enough leads coming in that they just needed someone to just pick the phone up and make calls to these inbound leads. So I sent my resume over actually, and the hiring manager looked at my resume and said, no way, no how. And my buddy Randy said, hey, you just at least got to give this guy a shot. And so they did a phone interview with me that ended up lasting for an hour, and they hired me over the phone. So, I mean, I guess I had enough phone presence there to be able to talk my way into a job.
That's awesome. What was the biggest secret / takeaways that you had from selling the seafood to all these companies?
Well, I mean, the biggest part for that, I mean, I've always done sales almost the same way, right? Even though I've been pretty strong, I've had a very much of an invested background in the centric sales methodology from a tech side. I've always really had a centric sales approach. I went out and sold cars for a buddy that was a GM at GMC for about 3 months. Just as you shut down a company after 8 years, you need a little bit of time to just regroup. I went out and bought a dog, had a kid, and just spent a couple months at home and did that little thing. And then, your wife gets tired of you being home. So I went and did the car thing. And I mean, I even worked at a Jared Gallery of jewelry and sold timepieces, they call them, not watches, right? And the same perspective I took in sales, even at those jobs, were the same thing I do with technology, right? If somebody came on the car lot and they wanted to go look at a convertible and you started talking to them and they're a guy like me with 4 kids, you're like, there's no way in hell you're ever going home with a convertible. Let's talk about what you really need to fulfill that transportation need. And it really became a centric sales model even back then, to where you're looking at who your buyer is, what the real challenge in life is, and how do you solve the problem. And that's really the takeaway. And even back in the seafood sales piece, I could easily sit down and build a persona around who my buyer was. And lucky for me, I was selling to one of the top markets in the state of Maryland, Virginia, DC, selling into the Phillips seafood chains. So I was able to take that use case or that story and go in and say, hey, I supply Phillips Seafood Corporation. Are you interested in looking at our wholesale division, all this stuff? And that allowed me to go in with a good story. So you had some reputational, build that you could kind of focus around that. So I think it's 2 parts, right? It's number one, understanding who your buyer is, how to go and engage with them to solve this very specific problem. And then the other part was, even in the seafood business, once I got the trucks on the road and had other people doing that, I focused on who those markets were and how large I could expand them. So I went from having 2 or 3 restaurants in that first year to, by the time we were done, we had 40 or 50 different accounts in the state of Maryland, and we had 3 or 4 vehicles going up and down the road. So there's a lot of things that relate in sales. It's it's not cookie cutter in the knowledge side. You need to learn and be an expert and have the knowledge to be able to speak to people in the industry from the persona. But the basics of sales, if you're not just trying to shove that square peg in the round hole, are all the same. Just really, truly start to understand who your buyer is, what makes them buy, or what are the cycles they go through to make a decision to consider buying, and just really focus on that, the educational side, and still being respectful to who they are and what they do for a living.
That's awesome. And then was it difficult? You said you had a buddy that was doing inside sales in tech. Like, was it difficult for you to make that transition? Like, how'd you get into that job again?
Yeah, so it was very difficult. I mean, I went in I didn't know what a router and a switch was back in 2007, right? And I was kind of anti-technology even back then. I was a guy who had the little cell phone that you carried around in the handbag, right, early on, because I thought that was cool. But then when it got into the internet and websites and all that stuff, I didn't have a lot of interest back then. I didn't completely grasp it in the early stages. So for me getting in, I think what really accelerated my time was that I walked into a room full of really smart individuals, guys that were in there, bullpen mentality, really new tech, had some conversations that I was hearing on the phone that just were well above my capacity or brain level at the time. And I really decided to spend my time with a lot of the engineering team. We were lucky enough that where I was in a location where the engineers and the sales development, inside sales people were kind of all in the same area. So I really started to leverage my engineering team to understand, hey, what is all this stuff, right? Because I got the high level, here's the bullet points and what the product does, all that stuff. But when you're doing outbound, the first thing I realized was that everyone's calling out and trying to be a bullet point salesperson, right? Hey, I got, big wheels on the car and a big trunk and it's got tinted windows and all that stuff. Every vendor on the planet is saying those things. So for me, I had to really get into the engineering side of, hey, what does this thing really do? How does it solve these problems? And who cares that these problems are being solved? So I think that, my strength was that I aligned myself to much smarter people that really knew the technology side. And then I was also just naturally surrounded by salespeople who were dominant in the industry and were taking a company in early stages to growth through their persistence in doing outbound in those early stages back then.
That's awesome. And then, what was your biggest learning experience at Netcord before you moved on to AccelOps?
Yeah, so it's interesting. And Netcord was acquired by Infoblox. So right away in my early stages, I had the experience of being with a company that went IPO, which is, to see that transformation of, as a sales guy, you can kind of run around doing what you want, get away with certain discounting, all those things. Then now they've inserted all this process and, even taking on orders became challenging because it had to be approved. You're like, you get a sale done. It's like, wow, it's not even accepted by the company yet. So it's an interesting point there to see that transition or transformation from trying to go IPO and then really buttoning down to do it. So I think that my biggest takeaway from that was, we were a company that was selling a product that was nice to have. We were doing network change configuration management. So we were automating a lot of the changes that could be made on the network. And it was a wonderful thing, right? It really added a lot of value and put time back into the bucket. But we were selling into an audience that's job was to go and do those manual tasks. So it was challenging getting through to the decision makers, and the people that could actually benefit from it looked at it as almost a job replacement. And of course, a lot of that's evolved since then. But the biggest hurdle right back then was the fact that we were a nice to have solution. We had to really get focused on our educational side and how to go and educate the entire company around this evolution of how automation and network changes was taking place. But working for a company like that, I think that what I took away the most was, when I was working with the Infoblox team, I was actually given a regional sales job. I was moved out of sales development, inside sales, and taking on a territory quota. And I realized right away that my passion was not necessarily just in that closing function. It was in the go out and develop it, because that's the biggest impact for the business. Most businesses truly struggle with expanding that pipeline development, at least in a very strong way, in a qualified way. There's a lot of fluff within that pipeline development. So being part of the piece of the engine that just kept generating opportunities or at bats for the sales team, that was the most interesting. And then the other big takeaway was our CEO at the time, Don Powell, who ended up being a mentor of mine for about 15 years. He told me after the acquisition that because of the work that the inside sales and sales development team did for Netcord, it was a big part of why Infoblox even had interest in our company. They were trying to figure out at the time how to move the model more inside and try to keep the carbon credits, keep people out of the air from flying all over the place to do sales jobs that were smaller account revenue sizes. And I think that the combination of seeing the impact that you could have as an early stage person in sales development to drive those opportunities and see a company go from $4 to $20 million in revenue. And then also when the CEO tells you that the work that you had done to develop those opportunities played a big part in that acquisition, which ultimately took us all through IPO. I mean, that was a pretty good place to start my career.
That's awesome. Wow.
A little bit of luck and a lot of sweat equity.
Yeah. And then, so then you moved on to AccelOps, right? After a little while. What was AccelOps and why'd you decide to move on as an SDM there?
Yeah, the funny thing is that, I told you I got advanced to a field position at Infoblox, and my interest honestly was lower. And I think it kind of falls back to the story I told about the seafood and my family. Taking on that sales job, you're carrying a handbag around, right? You're jumping on a plane, you're going all over the place. It's not that I don't like travel, but travel's fun the first few times. And then when you're doing it every week, it becomes a little less fun than it was originally. So the travel portion didn't really fit the lifestyle that I wanted to build as well. So the sales rep that I had built millions and millions of dollars for, actually the very first opportunity I found at Netcord, they closed. It was about $1 million plus deal with Arby's. that deal had really bonded our relationship from, he had seen a lot of churn in the SDRs where SDRs would come in or they'd get advanced to an inside seller right away. I kind of came in and just dug in because I knew that this was a transition in my life to where if I got this right, I could build a career in technology and provide for my family in a different way outside the seafood industry. So he really saw that in me, even in that early stage, and him and I built a very strong relationship. And he moved over to Excel Ops in the process of me still being at Infoblox. And I started getting these calls from him about these other opportunities that existed to come over and rebuild the inside sales, the sales development business that he really thought that I was passionate about. And that was really my first opportunity to go build an inside sales program was at Excel Ops, to be able to go over, take a company that had a few $1 million on the board. The founders of Excel Ops had already had one acquisition where they had sold a software solution off to Cisco. So they had already hit a home run. And I saw this product and said, there's a lot of legs on this. And the guy that went over, very much a trustworthy individual to be able to go work for. And then here I get to go and start this, sales development journey as the leader after only having 3.5 years of, relative work experience. So my experience there was really just building from the ground up for the first time. And we were majorly successful at going over and putting a lot of revenue on the board there.
Got it. And what was the biggest secret takeaway that you had there that drove to the success of adding those millions in revenue? Yeah.
So as a sales guy, you kind of get in this mindset that, nobody's really helping you and that you do everything yourself. Right. And that's not a scalable mentality. So one of the most brilliant things that I learned there was having that relationship with a marketing organization for the first time, because I'd always been really sales managed, at every place I've ever been, even prior to IT, it's always been a sales leader that's been under management under. And at Excel Ops, I really got to collaborate with the CMO at the time, Scott Gordon, who's actually somebody that I'll talk about later on that I went to work for later on. But awesome. I saw this collaboration between sales and marketing, and the outcome of that collaboration is pretty much unstoppable when you're able to get a marketing team that is really aligned to the sales objectives, meaning they're not just there to say, hey, all these leads came into the website and I'm going to sit through another QBR or sales kickoff and put all this stuff up in light saying how great we did, right? It was more about the accountability and the ROI of that work. So really drilling down to, okay, we got all these leads. What did they accomplish for sales? How many of them converted over? I started to just engage with marketing on a very much different level than I ever had. And I think that, the biggest takeaway from that is back then, the silos between sales and marketing were dominant. I mean, they were very clear that marketing has, there was a sandbox line, right, where marketing played over here, sales played over here. And when things went wrong, they threw things across the box at each other. And when things went right, everybody could get up in front of the room and talk about how great they were. The collaboration wasn't there. And you see those walls being removed greatly over the last 5 years, but 10, 12 years ago, they were very strong. So seeing how you remove the walls and start to work together in collaboration, the success that brings an organization is phenomenal.
That's awesome. Wow. Kind of becoming really close friends with marketing, leveraging their talents to drive the pipeline, the funnel, the sales that you needed to pitch and close it.
Marketing's the engine, right? I'd say sales development's the engine, but marketing's the fuel. That's kind of how I look at it. If they don't keep pouring that fuel in, eventually you run out of gas. You can only do so much on your own. And sales development, as great as it is to go outbound, we do a tremendous amount of that work to where you're just cold outbound doing the outreach and education. You have a slight amount of success or a good amount of success there, but ultimately dialing in the marketing piece of it and getting that tied together and having that no lead left behind mentality as a team, meaning that marketing is going to put a tremendous amount of effort into every single lead that comes across. And I think that sales is just as much to blame when they look at the fact that we maybe overlook how much effort goes into that marketing contribution, right? That every lead that comes across the board, there's a tremendous amount of money that went into that. Each lead cost the company several $100s. And then the amount of activity outside of just getting that, I mean, getting the analyst involved, making sure there's content, having the white papers and the data to be able to follow up with the lead. I mean, it's endless amount of work. And I think, as a startup now, you start to realize, right, that stuff doesn't just magically pop up. It's a lot of effort that goes into it.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so you learned how to become best friends with marketing. What was, what was next on the roster for your sales career?
Yeah. So really, if you look at my resume, it is 2 to 3 year stints here and there. There's a few of them, right? And my education came through job activity. It didn't come from a traditional university and, coming right into tech and having some understanding of that world. So, I moved around career-wise, number one, to get my income up because I started very low on that spectrum and then trying to build the income up to where, it put me in a different financial position personally. And second, to get different experiences within different software markets.
I think that's a micro secret, like
it is.
Jump it, like you
don't want to jump too
learn
early, right? You don't want to stay somewhere 12 to 18 months. You need to stay somewhere, 36 months should always be the goal. 5 years is a great window. If the company is doing what they should for you, it's a mutual thing in these equations.
Yeah. Few years, you just learn so much. It's like an MBA and that market, that company, and then you go to the next thing and you get another MBA at the next company. So I love that. Like if I wasn't doing Seamless, I'd jump around every probably 2 to 3
let's
years.
be honest too. This as far as how companies have been structured up until now companies are getting smarter about this. That movement point for you as an SDR and inside seller isn't clearly mapped out at most organizations. So it's a lot of times the organization's fault that they've allowed that transition point to happen, right? So if there's a clear path, and when I work with organizations now, we talk about that from day one. You bring in sales development, right? You look at the curve. It's not a hidden thing. We talk about it openly at our organization. 24 to 36 months. That's how long your sales development team stays in place. So then they want to go and do an inside sales role because they need more income and their skill set starts to go up higher in the market. So you have to have this clear path from sales development to inside sales to field. Now, if that path's 10 years long, that's fine. It just needs to have, micro advancements, acknowledgement points, and then, the very defined path of how do I go from A to Z? Because otherwise, once you get to a point, it's unfortunate, but you get 2 to 3 years, 4 or 5 years experience, whatever it may be. There's opportunities out there because the market is the way it is that need your help and are willing to pay you more money. So it forces you, because everybody's trying to build their brand, support their family, whatever, to do those transitions and moves.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, I know you then joined kind of the global sales development team at Forescout Technologies, right? Tell us a little bit about kind of the transition to Forescout. What was the tech that you were selling there? How'd you get in there? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so Forescout's my ultimate claim to fame, right? That's where I think that I took those years of experience and all the, we overlook a lot of the bad things and highlight the good things. I think I'm like everyone else. My knowledge is based on the fail points, and I can write books on that. But Forescout was kind of leading up to, it was all the things I had done prior leading up, and that relationship with marketing that I mentioned at the ExcelOps company, it all came from there. So building that relationship with marketing, I built it with Scott Gordon, the CMO. Scott Gordon was the CMO of Forescout. We had already worked together. He already understood exactly how I felt about sales development and the impact it could have in an organization. And then also he understood that my job was always to try to bring sales and marketing closer together. So strategically, Scott's one of those people that is accountable in a marketing aspect. He is accountable to sales, knowing that there has to be the contribution for marketing, and it has to be something that you can document and track and put statistics around. It was a two-way piece with that. It gave me an awesome opportunity, number one, to come over and build a global sales development department. But on the other side of the fence for Scott, it also put accountability in his marketing team. I came over to work for the CMO to build inside sales at a security company. So you do hear about that more often now, but it's still, traditionally inside sales is owned by sales.
Yep.
And I think that there's a lot of value in having marketing own parts of this, because the accountability has to be there, right? You have to make sure that it's not just put some stuff up on the board and put it in lights and everybody applaud it. It has to really contribute to the organization's growth or goals. And I think that that's, part of that accountability. It fell into the marketing side of Forescout. But Forescout, very interesting company. They're still doing extremely well. They're an IPO company. They went public, I guess it was 12 to 18 months back. And then, they built software that every company on the planet needs. It's protecting environments from these different access. Right? They were there when the iPad and iPhone explosion happened. They were there with a software solution that helped companies take devices on and off the network without having all these malicious activities become part of the network. So it was a little bit of a right place at the right time. But back to Netcord, my CEO there told me, it's like, our whole career is preparing. The train comes through one time typically, right? If you're not ready to get on the train, it goes by, it may never come back. Forescout is an example of a company who prepared. And when the train came through, the company got on it and they all got on the train and went forward. Sales, marketing, leadership. Everybody in that organization is just dialed in even to this day. And they have a single goal, and that's to go out and dominate the market from a software, sales, and marketing perspective. And I think that that's a rare thing. It's the unicorn. If you look at how few companies are going IPO, there's an equation there that you could probably figure out if you have some kind of degree in analytics, I guess. But it's more of a I don't know. It is definitely a unicorn situation.
That's awesome. And then so Scott hires you. You join the team to really build inside sales as part of marketing, right?
Yeah, when I got there, it was me. So we were starting sales development from the ground. Forescout was doing sales development with the account executives, things like that. They were responding to inbound. But the biggest part of that is when you're trying to take a company from, they were doing 100% growth year over year. I got there at 40 million. I left at 160, 170, whatever it may have been back then. And today, their report just came out. They're doing that a quarter, it seems like now. But I think the biggest thing at the point when I came in, when you're trying to go from 40, up to the 200 marker, was that you can't just rely on the inbound activity. That's a great part of the process to be able to get inbound leads and get awareness. But we had to go strategically outbound. We had to put the educational message together to be able to go and penetrate these accounts and educate people on how we were solving this real problem that was happening within most networks.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, what was the biggest success and failure at Forescout before launching your own company?
Yeah, so the fail points again, you try to cover those up in your own mind because they'll destroy you. But from a fail point, I think that it's probably just me as a leader, right? Just trying to understand how to correctly manage and keep the team going. Even though I think I scored okay on that, I think that you always have a lot more to offer your team, especially when it comes to training and things like that. But we grew that team from 0 to 30 in the 3 years that I was there. And that team put around 200 million in rolling pipeline on the board. At any given time, there was $200 million in pipeline actively moved from the sales development team. And we had over 150 million in revenue close in that 3 years from the program. So I think that it was another one of those situations where I was able to get the best people I think that I've ever worked with to come join the team there. And at the time, you're selling them a little bit on the future and where the company's trying to get to. But they all came in and just started dominating in that way. As far as success, I really, you mentioned my 23-52 step methodology that I've been working on since even the Netcordia days. And that was, I started working on account-based marketing, I guess they call it now, ABM. I call it ABP, account-based prospecting. I started working on that back in 2008, looking at how to get people to respond from a persona and vertical-based message point. And that's something that I really got to refine at Forescout, was able to go out and target these fortune accounts very specifically based on the educational message and the persona and verticals that we were going after. Because in oil and gas, the message was very different from a healthcare organization, right? A healthcare organization has patient data. They have access points within the hospitals that are vulnerable, all these things, versus, someone else that may be doing something online for retail. It was just, our message was different from the technology perspective as far as the user base, but at the end of the day, we were solving that same network problem. So I think that looking at how we develop our 23-52, and the 23-52, it just incorporates the 6 pillars of communication. And I think that we're, getting close to having the 7th with the SMS, but we do, calls, voicemails, emails, social media, direct mail, and then video messaging now. And then the next piece is the SMS that's coming in pretty strong. We're constantly looking at how we take those pieces and put them together in a puzzle to get people to respond. And a lot of times those responses are not going to be positive, right? They're like, get me off your list. I'm not interested.
Yeah. Sales
They still save you, 50 phone calls. So they're still good to get. But we're just using those pillars in every creative way that we can to push people through the process and educate them appropriately and professionally. But that's the bigger piece that I worked on. I mean, when you have a team of 30 people that are making on average 150 outbound calls, making 50 to 75 activities happen, you're looking at 4,000 plus activities in just the calls and voicemail side, let alone emails and social. With 30 people, you can really start to look at how the data is responding and then what parts of the network are responding to what messaging. So it really gave me more insight around how to follow the 2352 based on, a lot of it was based on size of market as well. If you're up in the enterprise space and you're trying to get a hold of an executive, I know how many times it takes to get that person to respond versus if I'm calling the SMB space and it's somebody that's lower level management. So a lot of those are just key factors when I talk to an organization today. We have to customize that outbound, right? If you're a highly transactional organization that's selling $400 products, you can't put somebody on the phone that gets paid $80,000 a year to do sales development.
Right.
And in the same aspect, if you're going outbound and you're selling only into the enterprise space and you're doing $250,000 deals, you need to go out and get sales development people that aren't just there to talk about bullet points. They truly need to be able to relate to the buyer persona and also understand the verticals. And it's a very intelligent, complex outbound process. But that's really the biggest part of ForceScout. It really gave me the opportunity to go and, I'm using money that's being built by the software company, right? So I'm able to go out and spend money on just about every tool that's out there to be able to try to put things through the process. And at the end of the day, as long as I brought that, 10x ROI back on my spend, then it was a home run. So, the education there was phenomenal.
Yeah, that's incredible. So you basically learned about, you said these 6 pillars, right? Email, run through those 6
Voicemail,
again real quick.
Email, phone call, video messaging, direct mail, and then social media. And now we have the SMS.
Yeah. I even think video in SMS is an interesting one to play around with too. Like what if I had your cell phone, like using Seamless or another platform, and I send you a cold video SMS? That's hard to ignore.
You can't get away from it, and it's like, and I'm starting to look at where I respond, it's like when I get
lost my audio. 1 second. Yeah, it's too funny, man. My VP of sales is dying to do cold video SMS.
I think it's a great idea. And here, listen, as long as you stay professional and you really focus on who the person is. Most people in the market, they're there they want to stay educated on what things are out there, right? So, if you call the CEO of a software company and you talk to them about janitorial services, they're going to throw you off the phone. If you call the CEO and talk about risk and certain things within the organization he cares about, he may not want to buy something from you, but he may be interested in why other companies are investing in your company to do that. So at least I think for the most part, the 80%ers out there are open to receiving the messaging. And if they don't want to receive it, they'll let you know. And I think that, it's hard. It's funny because a lot of times when I get these negative responses to any sort of marketing activity, whether it's calls, emails, or video, or whatever it may be, the people that seem to be the harshest on us, I look at their business and go, your entire organization is built on sales. You're doing the same thing to your market set. And you're giving me a hard time about trying to be professional and ask you if you have interest in learning more about what I'm doing.
Right.
Don't get deterred, by the people that respond to you like that. You kind of just shrug it off and move to the next person.
That's awesome. So, okay. So after ForceScout, you learn about the 6 pillars. You kind of have this idea of this methodology, the 25 by 50 or 23 by 50. Yeah. 2352 touch process. And that leads you to launching Qualified Meetings then?
So I bought the URL for Qualified Meetings almost 5 years before opening the company. So even back, and this is funny, but when I was at Infoblox and moved over to CollabNet, this was already in my head. I knew Steve Richard back then at Vorsight. I was starting to learn
cool.
Some of the OGs and inside sales, right?
Is he out by you, by the way? Is he in Florida? No,
he's in Virginia.
Virginia, that's right.
He's in Virginia, and they're they got the exec vision thing going now. So he's just continued to expand on, promoting our industry and kind of advancing it. So it's awesome to see these guys really taking off. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. What were we going with?
So you bought the domain.
Bought the domain 5 years prior. And then this is even the way I started this company, it's based on sales development, right? I mean, I built the company the same way that I built my career. I took a 12-month contract with another company called CollabNet. CollabNet was looking to do they wanted to merge with another organization. They wanted to get their revenue up, which they were successful in doing. So I had a very specific job of coming over and building a sales development program in 30 days so that they could go out and do certain things on the financial side and then get this customer base improved. And while we were in the middle of doing that, that's when it really came to me that it was time to go and do this. I actually think I started later than I should have, based on where the market is today and some of the dilution that's there. But anyway, right in the tail end of being at CollabNet, I was probably 2 to 4 weeks out from the 12-month period ending. I sent an email out to about 10 or 12 people that I worked with for the last 10 years and said, hey, I've had this domain. I'm about to launch this company. What do you think? Would you have any interest in working with us or not? And out of the 10 people, 5 or 6 of them came back and said, okay, if you launch the company, we'd be happy to talk to you about your services. One of the companies that I sent that email over to came back and said, you know something? We know you. We need to do this. We're actually behind the 8 ball. We need you to start in 30 days.
Oh, that's awesome.
I said, okay, well, I didn't have a company yet. I was still in kind of the infant stages. So we literally got a deal done with them and launched the company within 2 weeks, set up office spaces, all those things, and then kind of just been blazing a trail for the last 2.5 years since. I mean, we started with one client, grew the team up to over 30 in the first year. And at this point, we've done about 40 build outs. And a lot of what we do is not just outsourcing the SDRs, because there are a few options out there for that now. How intelligent they are, that's up to the needs of the buyer and how educated they need those teams to be. For us, it's about making sure the organizations have the sales development infrastructure in place, whether that means we come in and help build the 2352 with you, help train your people to, be able to put that in place, or they outsource it through us. It doesn't matter to us. We just really want to be part of that equation in some capacity.
That's awesome. That's great. And that sounds like a micro secret is like selling, but before you even have an MVP almost. Like,
I work with the startup community here pretty strong in Tampa, right? I'm trying to, even as small as we are, I try to pay it forward as much as I can and coach and mentor in the sales arena. And I think that's, the biggest thing for startups is, before you go out and dilute the value of your organization and start handing out stock and taking on money, if you truly have something that's valuable to the market, go and get some people interested in it. Go do some basic groundwork to develop sales, get 2 or 3 clients, and then go seek the money. It just makes for a much stronger position for the organization.
I love that. I mean, it just makes total sense, like try to sell it, see if people would buy what you have to offer. I did, like, as the CEO and founder, I sold like the first 100 deals, customers all on my own, like hard, just prospecting 24/7. I mean, and
I still do. So, I mean, I've actively, we have promoted one of our people that have been with us for a while to VP of sales, just actually in the last few weeks.
That's awesome.
I've led our sales. Thank you. I've led the sales organization here for a considerable amount of time since we opened. It's hard for me to even get myself out of that. I just enjoy it so much on the front end, just trying to understand, what are we going to go in here and solve, and how are we going to go do it? And just trying to build that structure out for what these opportunities are going to look like for both of us. Because for us, we walk away from as many deals as we have walk away from us, right? Because it's a very specific thing that we do, and we become part of the team almost. Because walking away from Forescout, one of the things that I saw was a problem with the industry was there was too many of these sales development companies. It was kind of like the Wizard of Oz, right? The curtain's pulled. You don't know who's behind the curtain. There's a bunch of shenanigans going on. You don't know who your reps are.
Yeah.
I've interviewed plenty of reps from our competitors, and they're working on 14 different accounts at the same time. And that was a challenge for me when I hired outsourced vendors at Forescout. And I wanted the company to stay away from that. I wanted us to truly have an alignment with the organizations and be dedicated resources for them. But when you do that, I mean, it's a heavy concept, because we become accountable to organizations almost in the same capacity as if we work there. We come in, we become part of the team, we show up to meetings, we do all this stuff. So the scalability of our business was a lot slower than I originally anticipated, because you start scaling out, you water things down to a point where I'm back to the people that I talked about in my earlier stages and starting the company, how I didn't like it, then I just become that.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Well, you've had a hell of a career in sales development, from first swinging lobsters and crab legs to, getting into to sales tech. And, now I'm excited to kind of dive into, obviously, what the audience is dying to know. Sales secrets from the top 1%, where the world's best sales experts share their secrets to sales success. Matt Wheeler, what is your number one top sales secret?
So I think it's going to absolutely fall into the methodology, which is all around the 2352 step process, right? It really falls down to stopping. Just like, if you're building out a sales plan of any kind, the pipeline is where you start with that. And I think that it's a simple, old, traditional kind of perspective, but it just still holds true today, that you have to understand your buyer first. Spend as much time as you can truly getting into the mind of the buyer. And I think that too many organizations or even salespeople treat people like they're a name on a sheet, right? They're just, hey, that's Bob over at, whatever company. That's not at all who we're selling to. I mean, we're calling into somebody who personally has goals within the organization. They want to promote their career. They want to make a name for themselves in the organization. They have a job when they show up and sit down at their desk. And you got to really get into the mind of that individual. I think that is the first part of this step, right? Is to really understand who's the buyer, what is this problem that I'm solving for this individual or these individuals in these companies. And I think that most people don't spend enough time there. I mean, I talk to a lot of mature companies, and you go in and the assumptions on the buyer and, why they're buying or the verticals that are buying, they're very high level, and they're also based on what happened 3 days ago. And I'll make this comment about the restaurant business. I'll go back to that. When I had the restaurant business, I would go around talking to people about the lunch specials and things like that, right? I'd go to the restaurant and I'd say, hey,
dude, by the way, talking about all this seafood makes me so hungry, man. This is brutal.
Sorry about that.
No, keep going though. You're talking about the lunch specials.
Yeah, I would go in and I'd sit down at a restaurant and I'd say, hey, I want to get that stromboli, whatever the word it was that you had last week. And they'd say, oh, we don't have that anymore. I'd say, what do you mean you don't have it? Nobody bought it. Nobody bought it. You just started doing that 2 weeks ago. That was your new lunch special. Well, the owner decided it wasn't a fly. So I think that a lot of times businesses have that mindset, right? They take a very small set of data and make assumptions around it. And for us, we don't do that. We try to take hundreds and hundreds of data points before that. A lot of reps or even sales leaders, they'll say, oh, we talked to these 3 companies and they weren't interested. Okay, so we just made an entire decision about how your organization is going to sell based on the fact that 3 oil and gas companies weren't interested in moving forward right away. So you need to spend time really understanding the buyer, going out and then doing some exercises around that buyer landscape. So even in the process or the methodology around the 2352, you don't have to go out and do this massive push of like 100 million things, right? You're better off to go out and make micro target, as we use that word micro a lot. Consolidate it down, pick 50 companies or 25 companies in each space, pick 2 to 3 verticals within those spaces, and then go out and really start to do the messaging based on that persona and vertical and try it down all 6 pillars, right? Run a test, a very educated test around the pillars and the verticals and the personas, and truly look at what the responses are and where the best place to spend your time is. Now, when we look at enterprise sales and reaching out to enterprise folks and executives, we still have a tremendous amount of time on the phone or success on the phones. Most people steer away from the phones. They think that it doesn't work. There's a reason they think that, because getting into a persona in an enterprise environment that's a C-level person, it typically takes us 32 to 33 touch points. Calls, voicemails, emails, social, all this stuff. And you have to do it in a certain time frame to even get some heartbeat of response to say, hey, interested, not interested, call me later, whatever that may be. So they give up way too soon. So I think that you run the test, right, based on the 2352 for us is the foundation. That's our highest point of output. So the 23 is based on an inbound lead.
I was about to say, what is the 2352?
Yeah.
What is it?
So inbound, we have a 23-step process that we process an inbound lead 23 times. We have 23 touch points, and we typically keep that into a 60-day time period or less. And that's a series of voicemails, calls, emails, outreaches that I discussed earlier, all those things in a very educational manner back to the person that raised their hand. When you talk to an organization, the first thing they say is, when I even go to do accounts, we start doing the outbound and say, hey, what are you doing for inbound? Oh, we have those covered. Okay, you have those covered. Let's go and look at them. They've converted 8, 10, 12% of the inbound because those were the highest converting thing. They thought that was good. What they don't realize is that most of those inbound leads convert at the 15th touch point. Those people come in, they make a lot of assumptions on your website. They think you do this or that. They fill out the request form. They go to the vendor or the next vendor's website to do the same thing. That vendor may have gotten them on the phone that second. They lost thought about you and moved on. And then the boss comes in the room and they're distracted on some other project, right? So because they came in and didn't respond right away, it doesn't mean anything. So we have a very defined methodology of how we respond back to them. And we keep, peppering them with professional and educational information for a period of time. And our conversion rates go majorly up. For an example, we have a security company, big, massive amount of inbound leads. We were able to convert 156% higher in a 90-day period for their inbound bucket of leads than they had been doing historically just by putting things into that process. Things come in, they got picked off the tree, low-hanging fruit. The rest of it got the classic 5 to 6 touches, right? I called it, I voicemailed it, I emailed it, I sent them a LinkedIn request. A decent rep does that a second time, which puts you at 8 touch points. Wow. And then they throw it into the recycle bucket. You're only halfway there. So I think that you're starting to drill down to understand who your buyer is, your persona, your vertical, and then your methodology. So that's in an enterprise environment where that 23-step process is necessary. If the environment is not enterprise, you're not calling into Wells Fargo, these big organizations, maybe you're a mid-market or SMB, you can adjust that. You don't need to do 23 steps. It may be 12 steps, 14 steps, whatever it may be, but you need to have enough data collection there to put things all the way up to that point enough times where you say, okay, we got 1,000, touch points into that 23 process. It doesn't require it. We can skinny that back. And on the 50,
I was about to say, and then what about the 52?
Yeah, so on the 52, this is a big takeaway from ForeScout and some of the other companies that I've had to go in to go penetrate target ideal accounts. Once you understand who your target profile truly is, the idea is replicating that story, right? Hey, we solved this very specific problem for these financial institutions, and here's the people we solve it for. Let me go share that story with people just like this in similar verticals, right? So now we're starting to do this outbound through education. The 52-step process is based on that educational cycle outbound with those pillars of communication. And what we've seen is in an enterprise environment C-level, it's typically 32 to 33 touch points. Well, we also saw that in the 50th touch point or 46 to 50, if you hadn't gotten them on the phone in that 32 touch point, there's a dead spot from 32 to 40 something, and then it spikes back up again. So we just go ahead and ultimately process them, but we extend the tail end of that out a little bit so that it's a little more delayed. So it's not just pounding on people intensely for a short period of time. Now, the same thing goes in every market, right? If you're calling into somebody mid-level enterprise, that's going to scale down. It may end up being a 40 touch point process or a 30 point process. But the idea is until you hear back from someone, either they say not interested, I don't care, timing's off, hey, I am interested, whatever that may be, you don't know anything. That's the biggest thing. You don't know anything.
I love that secret.
You don't know if somebody has seen your emails. You don't know if they ever checked that voicemail bank on their phone. You don't know anything. And, timing in sales is everything. So I think one of the things we've seen from that persistent interaction with our lead database is that even when people come back, they sometimes will say, okay, you've really come after me for the last 90 days. What is it that you want? And when they do respond in that way, this is where the educational side needs to be dialed in and your reps need to be very well trained. When somebody comes back to you, especially at the C level, you better have your story together, right? Why did you call that person so many times and reach out to them? It's not to be annoying. It's because, hey, listen, John, we've identified that organizations like yours and guys and girls in your position typically benefit from XYZ, right? So you're able to go in and just start having a very drilled down business conversation. And I think that's the bigger importance of it. You can't go into, there's a whole nother chapter around, in my head at least, over latent versus active buyers, right? That's a latent buyer. They're not really looking. They're responding to some of the message. Maybe you hit a hot button for them. you don't want to just start bullet point selling them. Hey, here's all the cool functions and features my product has. They don't care. Every product on the planet can say those things. You've got to go in and do a business case with them and continue to talk about the problems you solve, the people you solve them for, and truly understand that. It can't be a high-level sales thing. You have to understand their business in a way that you can speak to them and have that dynamic interaction between them.
Wow. I love that.
I think you hit a hot button. I got a little worked up there.
you don't know anything until you hear back about something, right?
That's my golden rule. If you don't hear back, you don't know a thing. You make an assumption.
If you don't hear back, you don't know anything. And is that the secret, or is the secret like the 24 by 52?
Well, the 2352 can, it kind of keeps you from, going insane and putting things through an endless process, right? For us, we'll put leads through that cycle, and then 9 months later, we might put them back through. We have access to some of the best data on the planet. I mean, we're a big Discover.org user. Discover.org is tied into, Zoom Info and Ranking and databases that I've been using. We use other databases as well. But from a primary source of data, we're able to go.
Yeah, we'll have to get you on Seamless too. I think you'll love it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's something that actually Seth was our VP of Sales actually brought up to us. So, and I think he's scheduling some demos there. But from a data point perspective, if you're able to go in and really identify the personas and the verticals that you're working with, and you can go and build those profiles out to be able to identify what that educational cycle should be, then you know that you're reaching out to them for a very specific reason. It's not really a cold call, right? It's an outreach to educate. And I think when you get through that outreach that you're trying to educate at a certain point, either there's some reason they're not responding, either timing's off, they're just too busy, they're not getting any information from you at that given time, or whatever the scenario may be. It's time to move on to another bucket of leads, right? We can only process so many leads at any individual time. So we want to just keep these buckets moving along so that you kind of keep things fresh. So we structure that in a way that, from our perspective, the sales development role should be managed where the infrastructure around the program should be defined by the organization. The messaging, the verticals, the personas, the best places to go sell. You want the organization, the company, to be able to help push that along, to really help the company have a mission to go in one direction around who that buyer is and that mission. Because if you leave that on the sales rep's plate, you can go from rep to rep, and the messaging is going to be all over the place, right? So by putting that process together and making sure that we're pulling data in the right way through Seamless, Discover, whoever it may be, you're able to go, here's your process and methodology, follow this, and then at the end of it, you recycle and start over, and you can monitor those buckets of time to see what the results are.
That's awesome, man. Well, I know I'm going to get kicked out of this room here in a second. Matt Wheeler, thank you so much. If you don't hear anything, you don't know anything. If you don't hear anything, you don't know anything. Like, I'm thinking of the chapter title. If you don't hear anything, you don't know anything. That's a great secret, man. And you can leverage the 23 by 52 process for the inbound and the outbound to develop, nurture, qualify, build that long-term relationship at scale, and then figure out, are they, latent, current, active buyers or not? It's genius. I love it. And for the audience, Matt, where can people follow you, learn from you, subscribe, for you for more?
Yeah, qualifiedMEETINGS.com. We're also, Monday we start with our video production team. We're going to work together. I'm going to, ping you about doing some mutual things together. We really want to start to educate the market and put as much free information out there as we can. We're also working with USF here locally in Florida to build some educational programs around sales development. Education is king, and a lot of people are just entering the workforce for the first time doing sales development work. It's time to grind and learn. So there's so much good information. Yourself and so many others are out there putting good information out. Just read and listen to as much as you can. And I think at the end of the day, you just got to grind it out to get there.
I love that. So follow you on LinkedIn, and then also go to qualifiedmeetings.com and subscribe to more.
Yep. Thank you very much for that.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Matt, for joining us today. And thank you for the audience for joining us for this episode of Sales Secrets from the Top 1%, where the world's best sales experts share their secrets to sales success. Pick up a copy of the book at secretsalesbook.com. That's secretsalesbook.com, secretsalesbook.com. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Sales Secrets from the Top 1%. We release new episodes every Monday and Thursday, so make sure you subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube to never miss an episode.